Hey guys, it's Kim here with Fairly Fiber Fun. Thanks for joining me on another blending board tutorial. So in today's tutorial, well, first of all, this was a special request from a member of our very own WAFA group, and I thought I would do a blending board version of this request first, and then I will go into a drum carder version of this particular technique. So the request was in a comment on my last tutorial where I made stripes on the blending board for Rolex. And the request was, can you show us how to do more blending? So I have some fibers that I'm going to throw together. I think you can see a lot of difference in the colors here. This is bamboo that I dyed. This is Dorset wool. And this is Gulf Coast native that I dyed. So we're just going to blend on the blending board. I've never actually done this myself. I understand the concept, but to me it seems like an awful lot of work when I could just throw it through the drum carder. So probably won't do the whole board. But let's just jump right in and get started, shall we? Okay, so I am using some black Dorset roving, some hand-dyed Gulf Coast roving, and some bamboo that I dyed. And that's all I'm going to use for today's tutorial. I got to start with finding the end. Just a crochet chain of this roving. I don't need a huge amount of it. It's like I don't need a huge amount of this either. Okay. So the idea is to do blending so I'm only going to do a small section of the board. I'm actually going to turn it sideways here, make it a little bit easier for me. And I'm messily throwing it on here because I'm going to take it off and put it back on. I'm only doing a small amount of this just to demonstrate that it can be done. I don't want to do the whole board. We will do this again on the drum carder, so there will be, that's really pretty. There will be opportunities to see this in more detail. Like I said, right now I'm just being super messy, throwing it on here. The top of my board is here, so the tines are facing that way. I have screws in the top of the carding cloth holding it in place to the board. That's how I know what the top is. And I've also got these little marks that I put right here at the top. So I can never get confused of what's the top of my board. Okay, now I'm just going to pull it off. It's a little tiny bat. It's in layers of color. So I'm going to strip it down, draft the sections a little bit. And now we're going to put them back on the blending board. And we're going to do this a few times. Don't even have to draft if you don't want to. Keeping it top and bottom. The colors layered top and bottom. I'm not turning them sideways. If you turn them sideways, you'll end up with stripes. So I'm keeping them stacked. So if the only tool you have is a blending board, you can blend colors and textures together. And again, I'm really just kind of throwing it on here, being fast and messy because it's going to be done a few times. You can take your dowels and roll it off if you want. Now I'm getting some stuff wanting to stay in the carding cloth, so I'm just going to gently lift it with the doffer. Ice pick or awl works really well. See, that's no longer in the individual color layers that it was, but let's do it one more time. I'm so used to having my board anchored to a surface. I am not used to it moving around. And you don't have to keep them oriented, the top always being the top. You can flip them around. For some reason, my brain doesn't want to do that. I think I will do one more time, and then we'll see how it looks. I chose these particular colors because I thought it'd be easy to see how blended this is. Okay, slowly getting there. You can still see that there's layers, but the layers have multiple colors in them. So now I'm going to gently open it up and then draft it down into the tines of the carding cloth, trying to get it just a little bit more thoroughly blended. You can take the layers apart. You can blend in your hand. And that can actually make it easier to draft it down into the carding cloth if you get a bundle in your hand and just kind of draft it into your hand to further blend the colors. And right now you can tell this is pretty blended, all things considered. And considering what we started with, this is looking a whole lot better, if blended is what you're going for. So you don't have to have a drum carder to blend fibers. If you cannot afford a drum carder, all you can afford or all you have is a blending board, you can make it work. You can absolutely make it work. It's a lot of doing this over and over again, but Now I'm going to check and see if I have any really thin spots. I got a few up here. The top of the board usually does. I got a little bit here. Right there. I'm just going to try to use up this last little bit without going outside the lines I've already established. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to turn the board around and push it up a little so you can see. And we're going to roll it off like we would any other roll leg, except that we're going to do it all in one go instead of multiple roll legs. So I'm drafting, relaxing, and rolling. Lift, draft, relax, roll. It's easier when the board is braced against my body here. Just keep going. Oh, I've lost some of it. So what happens if you decide it's a little too tight, that you don't like how streaked this is, you really want to do more blending? Well, it's going to be a little bit difficult, but it can be done. So first you want to really draft it out, your roll leg. At this point it's more like a roll log, it's so thick. And I'm going to break it into chunks I can maneuver a little easier. And I'm going to try to make a bigger, wider. And we're just sticking the drafted roll leg back into the tines. Okay. Let me turn the board sideways to me again. That's how I do it. You always want to draft at least some while you're putting the fibers on your board. It helps it to go into the teeth because you're pulling against the teeth and they'll grab it a lot easier. Again, I don't want any holes in my roll leg or any really fat spots and skinny spots, so I'm trying to get this fairly even across the section of the board that I'm using. Oh, there's an empty spot there, but I've already finished, so oh well. And it's not wanting to come off as smoothly, but it's working out okay. It'll spin just fine. I take a little extra effort at the wheel, maybe a little extra textured because it was a rolag that was then put back through the blending board. But this is really, really nice, and I'm ready to spin this now. I actually earlier left a few pieces where I forgot they were sitting. So we now have examples. We have the thoroughly blended second time through rolag. So this was a rolag that was then recarded. We have the first version of the rolag that's already been drafted. And we have the original layout of the colors. That is a huge, huge difference. All right, so we have finished the little tutorial. For you, it was a tutorial. For me, it was an experiment. And I am pleasantly surprised at the results. Now I cannot wait to go spin the rolag we made together and see how it spins up. I should just grab a spindle and do some spinning. Why don't I do that? So while I'm spinning, I'm noticing that there are definitely thick and thin spots. It's not wanting to draft super even, but that's because we made a rolag and then decided to put it back through the blending board. Let's try this piece here. That was only one time a rolag. See if that's any better or worse. And this spindle is so light. No. And this is what happens when you're not paying attention to your fiber supply. Happens to the best of us. My sleeve isn't quite long enough. So did we have to put it through the blending board again? No, we really didn't, but I like the results better. This is slightly easier to spin, but part of it is just the fiber is not the greatest for smooth spinning. I think at the wheel, it probably wouldn't be any easier to spin super smooth because the fibers are all different lengths. The the Gulf Coast is different lengths, and the Dorset's different lengths, and then we've got the bamboo in here that's all different lengths. So yeah. Let's store that on here. And then I want to spin the last sample I've got, which is the unblended version. And it's immediately marling a lot, but it's also easier to spin. And the black Dorset spinning really nice. I think the Gulf Coast is very old and compressed. I think that's what's giving me fits. And then the bamboo is quite compressed because of how I washed it after dyeing. I have a video on my YouTube channel where I dye the bamboo, or it will be coming out soon. And you'll see what I mean about how I washed it. Pretty much felted it a little bit, the bamboo. And I'm using the worst batch because why not? It's back spinning. Don't do that. Okay, so I have to say that the unblended version was much easier to spin, but so the unblended was the easiest to spin. The first time Rolag, if it hadn't been so thick and so messy, it would have been fine. It was a little thick and thin, not terrible. The redrafted, remade into a Rolag from a Rolag is the worst to spin. But I did not pre-draft this at all, and I think I could spin it on the wheel okay. I don't mind thick and thin. I don't mind lumpy yarns. I think they're great when they're knit up. You either don't see the texture or the texture just adds a little character to the garment. So all in all, this was a very unique experience and I enjoyed it. I've got a little sample here on the spindle that I will probably bracelet ply, or I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what I do with this, but this was fun. And I want to thank you for joining me on this fun adventure. Hope you learned a lot. I certainly did. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.